This psychological thriller begins in New York City, where we see a married couple, Anthony and Rachel. They've recently lost their son Nathan in a horrible car accident. Therefore, they plan on moving to Anthony's home country, Finland, with their other twin son, Elliot. The real estate agent advises the couple that they're not getting a decent bargain on this house and that they can do better. However, the couple is so traumatized and exhausted that they just want to get over it as soon as possible. Days later, the family arrives at the Finnish countryside house where they plan to start their new life. Anthony's a successful writer who plans to work from home, whereas Rachel was a photographer but has decided to take a break from work. While they settle in, Elliot flees into the nearby woods. Due to this, Rachel becomes extremely anxious and begins looking for him, and when she finds him, she begins to cry, as she does not want to lose her second child too. Later, Rachel notices Elliot playing with Nathan's favorite wooden maze toy, but she lets him keep it. Elliot then tells her that he wants a bed in his room for Nathan as well. Rachel feels strange about this, but she doesn't want to upset her son, so she agrees to his request. That night, while putting Elliot to sleep, he asks Rachel if she and Anthony love him as much as they love Nathan. Rachel assures him that they do, and even if Nathan is away, he will always be with them. But Elliot, who's still grieving his brother's loss, wonders if Nathan is always with them, because if so, whom did they bury? Later, we see that Rachel's emotional state has been severely affected by her son's death. The grieving mother still has nightmares every night in which she sees herself surrounded by people and her son lying in a casket. She informs her husband that she hears Nathan banging within the casket, but when she opens it, she discovers Elliot's body. The next day, the family makes a small memorial shrine to Nathan in their yard, and Elliot buries the maze toy in front of it, honoring his late brother. Following that, they go out on the lake and Anthony leads them to a rock with a red handprint. He informs them, according to the local mythology, anyone who places their palm on this rock and wishes for something will have their wish granted. So Elliot places his hand on the prints and quietly makes a wish. Later that day, Rachel overhears her son talking with someone in his room, but when she goes to check on him, she notices that the boy is playing by himself. Then Rachel asks him who he's talking to, but Elliot doesn't answer and shuts the door to keep her away. Days later, the family attends a welcome celebration hosted by their neighbors. Rachel feels quite out of place and strange because the locals are not open to her and she does not speak their language. However, moments later, a strange-looking Englishwoman named Helen approaches her and initiates a conversation. The two then go on a walk during which Helen claims that she is not insane as the rest of the locals believe. Rachel gets confused and asks what she means by that, so Helen holds Rachel's hand and tells her that she dreamed about her and her son. She further says that she knows the boy made a wish on the handprint, which has already come true. However, before Helen can continue, Anthony arrives and informs her that the town wishes to celebrate their wedding traditionally. After that, Anthony tells Rachel to leave Elliot with the elders during the ceremony, but she remains concerned. The couple then gets on a wedding swing, which Rachel is apprehensive about. She immediately begins to panic and searches for Elliot, but then things get worse when she hears Elliot call out to Nathan and runs off. Due to this, Rachel gets a panic attack and collapses. Seeing this, Anthony stops the swing and everyone comes around Rachel to try to calm her down. Afterward, when they finally find Elliot, Rachel tells him not to run away like this again. Furthermore, she gets confused when Elliot refuses to reveal where he has gone. That night, the poor mother tells Anthony about Elliot's strange behavior and he assures her that things will soon change for the better. Rachel then requests that he spend more time with Elliot, and Anthony promises to try. Meanwhile, we see Elliot in bed, switching over to sleep on Nathan's bed. The next day, while Elliot and Rachel are running around the house, we see Anthony crying in his study while looking at pictures of his brother Nathan. Meanwhile, Elliot's actions become increasingly bizarre. He frequently sketches disturbing images of his parents dying and the house burning down, and when Rachel notices this, she gets paranoid and tears off the drawings and scolds him. That night, Rachel gets anxious and goes into the kitchen where she drinks milk straight from the carton. As she prepares to leave the kitchen, she notices Elliot standing outside by the swings. Seeing this, Rachel immediately rushes outside, yelling his name, but the kid mysteriously vanishes. She later sees Elliot near another fence, but his face distorts and this turns out to be just another nightmare. After waking up, Rachel checks on Elliot and finds him on Nathan's bed. She then places Elliot on his own bed, who then suddenly declares that he is Nathan. So the next day, Anthony and Rachel decide to remove all of Nathan's belongings from his room and take Elliot to the doctor. In the clinic, the doctor tells Rachel that Elliot is a mirror reflecting his mother's anxieties and feelings. He advises her to remain calm, but Rachel objects, stating that it isn't about her, and storms out with Elliot. And now that she has no better options, she decides to seek help from Helen. In the next scene, Helen informs Rachel that the village they are in is inhabited by members of a demonic cult. These people strive to lure people to the devil as a sacrifice and keep themselves protected. She then shows Rachel photographs of how the town is laid out in circular patterns and how everything goes to the sacrifice rock. Her late husband had been sacrificed to the devil by the locals, and Helen claims that now the same thing is happening to Elliot. When Rachel returns home, Anthony inquires as to where she has been, but she refuses to answer. That night, Helen is awakened by sounds in her home, and while looking around, she inspects the bathroom, but finds nothing. But just then, as she watches her face in the mirror, Rachel begins to scream as if something is attacking her. The following day, Helen visits Rachel and informs her about the bathroom incident, which was actually a dream, and deems it a warning. When Rachel says that they're fine, Helen reveals that her husband was possessed many years ago and had an exorcism performed in town. Following that, any photographs of him had his face distorted, and he died a year later. Now, with her suspicions, Rachel stumbles across an old camera and decides to photograph Elliot. However, the boys become irritated and tell her to stop, after which he gets off the swing and runs away. Nevertheless, she takes the film reel to a neighboring town to get it developed. Afterward, Rachel returns to find Elliot still outraged at his mother for photographing him. He complains that his father does not love him and does not want to spend time with him, but Rachel tells him that this is not true. She then notices dirt on his palm and discovers that Elliot has dug up Nathan's toy puzzle. Enraged by his actions, Rachel takes the toy away and burns it in her fireplace. Moments later, Anthony arrives home and consoles his wife, who is having an emotional breakdown. Now, around midnight, Rachel's woken up by Elliot's whispers, and he asks her to follow him, claiming that Nathan needs to speak with her. And when Rachel tries to wake up Anthony, Elliot confidently tells her that he will not wake up. Meanwhile, at Helen's house, it appears as though she's seeing this in her dreams, as she shouts, "Don't go," while sleeping. Next, Elliot takes his mother to sit in front of a lit candle and a mirror in their drawing room. He claims Nathan has arrived and delivers his message to her. Confused and terrified, Rachel requests to see Nathan, but Elliot simply tells her to look at him in the mirror. She does as instructed, only to discover that her son is now holding the puzzle toy she had previously burned. Suddenly, a black hand reaches out to her, causing Rachel to drop and break the mirror. Just then, Anthony and the other villagers arrive in the room. He states that they simply want to take Elliot away from her in exchange for Nathan. Rachel is terrified and tries to protect her son, but he's already gone from the room. Now the villagers gather around the paranoid mother, and the doctor sedates her with an injection. The following morning, Rachel awakens to the sound of Anthony and Elliot laughing downstairs. She dismisses yesterday night's events as a nightmare, but soon, Rachel notices broken mirror pieces in the trash and needle pains on her body. Later, the family goes to town, and Rachel secretly corrects the developed photographs. Back at home, she locks herself in the bathroom and goes through the photos, noticing that Elliot isn't in any of them. Meanwhile, Elliot shouts out from behind the door, asking to see the pictures, but Rachel refuses to show him, claiming there is a serious problem. Realizing something's terribly wrong, Rachel rushes to Helen and begs her for help. At first, Helen believes this woman to be insane, but Rachel insists that she did photograph Elliot. Helen then asks her to take her to Elliot, and on the way she explains that she had missed the true point from the start. She says Anthony had already given their son Nathan to the devil for his successful career, and the car accident was a demon's ruse. The devil now wants Elliot, and the demon is now a part of his mind. When Rachel gives birth to the devil, he will force her to be his mother, and the devil will be resurrected. Now, after arriving at the house, Rachel takes Helen to Elliot and introduces him to the woman. But almost immediately, Helen gets frightened, tells Rachel she's a sick woman, and hurries out of the room. Rachel then follows Helen down to the drawing room, where they are again stopped by Anthony and the villagers. They detain Helen as she tries to pull out her gun, and the doctor injects Rachel with the drug once again. Moments later, when Rachel awakens with blurred vision, she finds herself on the shore and notices Helen's cut-off head lying there. Elliot is sleeping in a coffin, and Anthony slashes his throat as part of the ceremony. The blood is then fed to an unconscious Rachel, and some of it is massaged in a circle on her stomach, which expands instantly as if pregnant with a womb. Then the villagers recite an incantation before tossing Rachel into the lake. In the next scene, Rachel awakens back in her room. Just then, Elliot calls out to his mother, and when she asks where she is, Elliot says he doesn't know, but that it's very hot in the room. Rachel tries to exit, but we notice that someone has put a chair on the opposite side, stopping her from opening the door. Her maternal instincts kick in and she manages to break free. Then Rachel walks to the attic where she finds Elliot confined inside a trunk, just like the previous night. Convinced that the townspeople are working against Elliot, Rachel leaves the home with Elliot and rushes into the forest. Meanwhile, Anthony notices this as well and runs behind them, shouting out to Rachel, and the villagers follow. Running into the bushes, Rachel loses sight of Elliot and is attacked by Anthony. At this point, Anthony begins to choke his wife to knock her out, but Elliot comes and shouts at his father to leave her alone. With his minor gap in the incident, Rachel eventually takes a rock and hits him in the head. She then strikes her husband a few times and takes up a heavy rock prepared to kill him. Just then, even Anthony motivates her to finish him off since he's tired of it, but Rachel soon calms herself down. Now Rachel tosses the stone to the ground and walks over to hug her son. At that time, Anthony tries to stand up and reveals a shocking twist, claiming that Elliot does not exist. It turns out that Nathan was the only son who died, and they never had a twin. On the day of the accident, they had been fighting because she wanted to leave her husband and take Nathan with her. However, her blind wrath caused the deadly car accident, which she never forgave herself for. In the flashback, we see the accident left Rachel feeling guilty and depressed. One day, she created the illusion that Nathan had a twin who survived the tragedy. Anthony chose to let her believe the delusion since it made her happy. When several neighbors noticed Rachel talking and playing outside with a child who wasn't there, they began to get suspicious, and as a result, she was confined to a facility where doctors would try to eliminate the fake identity of Elliot from her brain. But Anthony didn't want that, since Elliot was the only thing that kept her happy, so he took her out of the facility and relocated to Finland to begin a new life. However, Rachel's obsession with her fake son grew dangerously in this new village. Back in the present, Elliot yells angrily that Anthony's lying and wants to kill him. He then flees to his abandoned silo, while Rachel follows her imaginary son, saying that she loves him. Moments later, Rachel goes to the top of the building and discovers a crying Elliot. After she confronts him and assures him that she believes he is real, Anthony arrives and tells her once again that Elliot is not real. Now, to prove that Elliot doesn't exist, Anthony proceeds to drown him in the wheat. Seeing this, Rachel furiously confronts Anthony, trying to drag him away from the silo lever. However, she accidentally pushes him down, killing him. Now Rachel hurries down and digs for Elliot, but she fails to find him. But when she looks over at her dead husband, Rachel has a moment of insight and realizes what has happened. The scene then shifts to New York, where Rachel is seen placing flowers at Nathan and Anthony's gravestones. Looking at her facial expressions, she doesn't appear to be saddened by their deaths, but rather relieved. Following that, she enters her car, where we see the imaginary Anthony with her two sons. This implies that her delusions have worsened, and now there is no one to intervene. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.